All right, then we should go ahead and start. Welcome to the third ever episode of Diablo Insights. I'm your host, Ava. I am a technical writer for maxroll, and with me today I have some new faces and some old faces, or however you want to say it. To my right, we have DeezyTheMonster. Why don't you introduce yourself and what you do for GMS?
Hey everyone, I'm Deezy. I primarily play Rogue and Druid, but played a bit of Barb in Season 2. If Sorc Chain Lightning buffs look great, I might dabble in Sorc for Season 5, but almost always go back to Rogue at some point. What I do for GMS, I would say in short, I'm kind of the helper. A lot of the GMS people are already like pushing top tier builds quite a bit, trying to get those guides out there. So one, I try to make sure I have knowledge of whatever those builds are, so that like if I see questions coming in, I try to answer those questions. Most of the builds I play usually are not top tier. Like I've been a huge fan of Flurry, grenades recently on Rogue, and big fan of Stormclaw on Druid. And I generally just enjoy theory crafting off meta builds, especially if like no one has looked into them before. I always watch the chats and see like if there's questions that people are asking, for either if I can answer something that I know has been tested or I've tested myself, or I can make a note of it to make sure at some point that it does get tested. So even though Druid chat sometimes feels abandoned by GMS, I am watching at times, so making sure that we're making note of those things. So
All right. And to DC's right, we have a man that needs no introduction in the Rogue community, at least, but for the 5 people on Sanctuary that might not know him, Mippy. What do you do for GMS?
Hey guys, my name is Mippy. I am the head of Rogue GMS. I coordinate all the Rogue testing, and many of you might know me also for various Rogue builds that I've done. I am a class specialist for maxroll, and I'm writing a lot of guides there. And I do stream regularly on Twitch. You might have seen me there once or twice. And yeah, that's kind of my thing. I do like everything for Rogue, basically, trying to coordinate a lot with Ava and also the other Rogue GMS to figure out all the things, find interactions, find stuff that's broken, trying to find solutions how to fix the stuff that's broken, and yeah, as a Diablo partner for Blizzard, also do report a lot of the bugs that we find.
All right, welcome. Underneath him, we have another person that needs absolutely no introduction in general in the Rogue community and in the Druid community, but Sanctum. Hello, buddy.
Hey guys. I guess I do all the mobalytics guides for Rogue, and I do some Druid guides for Wowhead. I used to be a Druid main. Ended up being a Rogue. It's been a roller coaster, but I like Rogue. It's fun. And for GMS, I guess I do some testing. I try to do some testing. I mostly analyze data. I get messaged by Ava at random times and try to help them out. That's mostly what I do. I talk with Deezy a lot. I talk with everyone in GMS quite a bit and help them out. And that's me.
Good stuff.
And to his left, we have the resident spinny boy, Miku. Hello. Can you introduce yourself and what you do for GMS?
Hey guys, I'm also Rogue main. I leveled mine to level 60, got the tempers, really important. Then I went back to Barb. But yeah, I'm mostly a Barb main. I try to help out the EMS with Barb stuff. I mostly specialize on Whirlwind, Shout stuff, and stuff like that. I also dip my feet on the other stuff as well. And I write some guides as well when I'm feeling like it, sometimes.
Sometimes when you feel like it, yeah. I mean, that's more than me, at least. I can tell you that much. Throughout this stream, you might hear us mentioning it, but I'm going to repeat it so as many people have the knowledge of it. After this stream, when I upload the VOD to YouTube, we are also going to be giving out 5 codes for Vessel of Hatred. So if you have participated here on Sanctuary, we are going to be essentially just, seeing who gets it. We're going to do a raffle and see who will be the lucky receivers of those codes. So just stay tuned for that. There's nothing you have to do to, join it. Like anyone that is here tonight will have a chance. Tonight, though, we are going to be talking about exactly that. We are going to be talking about Vessel of Hatred and what we are expecting essentially in general. Some topics tonight might be about the Spiritborn class, what we expect in the Endgame for Vessel of Hatred, and sort of what we would like to see overall with our classes. We will have some perspectives that are quite unique here, as we have two of the leading rogue content creators here for guide making as such. So we'll have maybe some unique perspectives on how to make builds regarding it and what their perspectives are regarding the Spiritborn and how to make builds for those. We'll just discuss a little bit of that. I also know that Miku has prepared half a book for this, so we're going to get some pretty good information about this. So we can start with just Vessel of Hatred in general. What's the vibe right now? What do you guys think about Vessel of Hatred?
Yeah.
Um,
You want to pick it up?
I'm pretty excited. Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess I'm pretty excited. I think the game is mostly trending in the right direction, and I guess something that I felt was lacking a lot in the game was I guess how do I put it, like classes with a very distinct um sorry, I got some audio played. Like classes with a distinct design direction, and it seems like Spiritborn is that, so when I see Spiritborn, I see like I don't know, Rogue feels vanilla in comparison, but I'm hoping, the rest of the classes get some love and some more, less just casting generic skills, which and then having, like, you have your shouts, your defense, and just like cooldowns. No, but instead, at least from what it seems in the Spiritborn, um the skills really are complementary, and then they play off each other, which is pretty cool, and there's a lot of options for play and scaling and all that stuff, and I feel like that's really good for the game.
Yeah, I honestly feel like it's gonna be a balancing nightmare because everything
Yeah.
just works with everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like imagine balancing a barb. Now make it three
No,
times
can't
worse or
imagine that.
something.
Yeah, but what if all classes were like that? It would be fun. If it's like Dota where it's all broken, it's fun.
Sure.
Maybe you had some thoughts about this as well.
It's like I really think the upcoming expansion has a lot of good stuff coming, especially for well, yeah, Spiritborn that we have seen. I think many of us are pretty excited to get our hands on a Spiritborn at some point, hopefully, to be able to test all the things, to be able to figure out all the interactions. There's already like so many things with the class that I would want to test out and to try to figure out how they're going to what they're going to do, and how we can utilize that to maybe get some interesting or even funny or broken builds. So I'm personally very, very excited to to see how we can make the synergies within the class. Like, Blizzard has showcased so many things about the class and how these things could be intertwined with each other, especially like combining certain spirit aspects with other ones, like combining Jaguar with Eagle, for example. Seems to be something that is already very popular in the theorycrafting realm. So yeah, it's like good stuff, and I'm also very excited for whatever else is going to come with the expansion. Like the information we have seen so far seems very promising, and I'm really looking forward to see where the game is going to be in the future.
What about you then, Deezy? Do you have any initial thoughts about the expansion?
Initial thoughts, I'm really excited, especially for the raid that's coming. It'll be interesting to see how that works and how they implement new gameplay mechanics across the board. I loved Monk in D3, so like Spiritborn is right up my alley. I'm probably gonna go in on this class quite a bit. I'm definitely ignoring all the numbers that we've seen. Like some of these numbers are broken. Um, beyond belief. So I'm sure there's going to be another balancing pass going through all those. Say one of the things that I'm a little bit worried about is force two-handed, because that limits the amount of aspects and uniques you can use, and Blizzard keeps on adding more and more of them that would be interesting to play around with, and you're going to be pretty limited on this class. But baseline class has a lot of good functionalities that are currently things that would be like aspects or uniques on other classes. So I'm excited to see how the design of Spiritborn gets used to update other classes. Like looking at the skill tree, basically every single node and skill seems like it will feel impactful, which like that's what Sanctum was getting at. Like a lot of the stuff in like Rogue Tree, it doesn't really do anything to the skill, so like that, but it's like you have to take it because it's just that good. Like Smoke Grenade, for example, or Caltrops currently. So yeah, looking forward to those changes.
I find it very interesting that we're talking about like our perspectives for Spiritborn in general, or like the expansion, and we very rarely talk about our actual classes in those topics. We're like, yeah, Spiritborn looks cool, the raid looks cool, then it's like, what about the classes we're actually playing? Are we all gonna be Spiritborn mains now? What are our fears going into this expansion with our classes? I know we have a very skewed representation of 4 rogues and a barbarian right now, but maybe I think we can include some of the other perspectives as well. So, what are our fears for our, the classes we normally play when we go into this expansion?
I
Say
mean,
my Go ahead.
oh, yeah, sorry. I mean, I think what most people might be afraid of is that, they had, at least what a lot of people think is like a good design direction with Spiritborn, and they kind of, forget about the other classes and don't really update them to that same state, because like Spiritborn just, I haven't played it myself, but like watching it just feels so fluid, so fun to play. It's just a blast playing it. While some of other classes, like for example Barbarian right now, is just sitting there, you know, hitting something. Maybe you're spinning a bit, but not
Hitting it
not
hard
much
though,
else.
you know.
Not much going on besides that. Yeah.
Yeah. So for example, I feel like Rogue, even though ignoring the power level, right? Power level is just numbers. So ignoring that, it feels like Rogue was designed with a different idea of the game, right? When the game started, it was supposed to be a slower game, a more methodical game, and it's just not how it ended up because people didn't want that, you know. So Blizzard started changing it, making more fast paced, bigger AOE, faster, better resource gen, etc. And Rogue, it was designed based on that the concept where you go in to the fight, you go out, you dodge, bob, weave, whatever, you know. That's not how the game is played. Instead, Spiritborn is designed distinctly with the current mode of play in mind, and you can tell. And so that's why I feel like some classes just shouldn't get number changes, you know, or a new shiny skill that hits pretty hard. It needs like a bit more direction and more like adapting to the new style of play, I feel.
Yeah, I agree, and I think this is a very good point, especially for Rogue. If you consider how Rogue has been in previous seasons, like let's try to think back how we played Rogue in season 0, for example, where the idea for Rogue was pretty much incepted. Um, it's basically we had this kind of thing where we used infiltration as an aspect to use concealment, lay down the traps, and then have a slower paced gameplay, which revolved around utilizing stealth and crowd control on monsters, where we actually only engaged the monsters during the time where they were not unstoppable. And once they became unstoppable, we had to use our defensive tools and create some distance to the monsters to not be overwhelmed by them. This is obviously not the kind of playstyle that we see in regular farming content anymore. This can be some sort of playstyle that you engage for in higher level pits when you are pushing, where you maybe do not have windows to deal more DPS while stuff is unstoppable. But as you can see from all of the footage that we've seen from Spiritborn and Vessel of Hatred so far, many of the interactions focus on killing the monsters quickly closing gaps, and being agile. And this is obviously also something that a dexterity class like Rogue usually also wants to do. And Sanctum said something along the lines, I think a few days ago, Rogue feels great when it's overpowered because you can zoom around, kill things quickly, jump from target to target, get your resets for Shadow Step and stuff. But it does not feel great when you have to have a more slow and methodical play because Rogue does not have that many tools to do that, even though it was designed to do that in the past, because your build will not utilize these tools today because you're mostly focusing on clearing the content quickly. And I don't know when the last time was that I have actually used Infiltrator anymore, or like certain defensive aspects that do these kind of things. But I think to sum this up, going forward, we do need to see some changes in the functional and the fundamental part for rogues and for other classes that have more of this design space that we see for Spiritborn, which is more on the agile and speed focused part to fit in with the current meta gameplay that we see currently for the class.
I think my biggest fear right now is that Spiritborn kind of takes the place of a lot of functions that the other classes do right now. Like, seems like it hits hard, which hits on Barb. Does a lot of comboing that's actually meaningful, which is what Rogue kind of does. You get your skill tags just from the specialization, which Druid needs 2 uniques to try and do the same thing. So there's a lot of things that I feel like seeing Spiritborn need to change for the other classes, and I'm not sure they have enough time to cook those properly. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited, but cautious about it. See where it goes. So
I
Adding
think
on
that.
to, sorry,
Go on.
go
Go on.
ahead.
You go on.
Okay, I was just gonna say, adding on to all of this, I think we're actually not giving a lot of attention to how like the tanky build Spiritborn can also go into. Like it can pretty much cap block with I don't know how much block reduction right now. It can probably go 100% evade if it wants to, which probably does not really go well with block, but alas. And it has insane torn scaling capabilities, like a lot of abilities that work well with torns. It can generate pretty much barriers infinitely, like constantly at least 50% of your HP covered with a barrier. And it has no shortage of ways to heal your life percentage base. Like I don't know if that's like that class. If it wants to, it's not gonna die. Probably worse than Barb, which is a high. It's high up there.
Yeah, I mean, so there's obviously a numbers game, and he'll probably tune it down. We'll keep it. Look, let's be honest. They're gonna keep it OP because people, have to buy the expansion to play the class and etc. etc. But they'll probably tune the numbers down. But still, the design space is there. They gave Spiritborn all these tools, and the other way they won't get these tools is if they like literally make them, I don't know, useless. Like the numbers are so low that they're useless. So, like, sure, you can balance them out with numbers, make them, be not OP as hell, but it's still there. Like, it's an option, and other classes don't have these options, don't have these synergies. Don't. It's just like you can tell this class is new. It's with a new vision of the game, and it's that simple. You can tell. It's pretty. It's so crisp. The animations too. They're like powerful animations. They're like maybe a bit too much, but I kind of like that. But you just can tell it's a new class. Yeah, they spent a lot of time in it, and it looks great.
Yeah, definitely. I also really enjoyed the presentation, how the class was introduced, and the designers, like I think Bjorn and Brent, they really seem to have done a lot of deep diving into how to design a class and how to make it not only visually but also mechanically appealing. And I think this is really good for the game if classes that we already have in the game do get a similar I'll not say rework, but a similar quality pass where they try to um improve the baseline of the class to the level that we see for Spiritborn right now.
Yeah, I actually think one of the most interesting points right now that you guys brought up was that the game was designed to be slower paced, and I think that's like one of the main problems for the classes that are designed around that sort of play style. I'm thinking like Druid and Necromancer are both two classes that are like traditionally very slow but methodical in how they execute fighting and how they build and stuff. It's like whenever we have any content that requires you to be speedy, it just they fall behind quite fast, unless their like fast builds are viable or strong in some sense. I guess like is it shred for druids that makes them teleport all over the shop? If that is strong enough to be pushing, then obviously like druid doesn't really suffer for it. But what has been the method now? Has it been landslide and wind shear?
Pretty much, yeah. And then Tornado has also been up there as a pretty top tier build. I think Pulverize has gone pretty high in pits as well, but I don't think it's as high as the others. Same with Companions. So with them changing like Shepherd's aspect, that's going to be a whole different build making. And then there's also some bugs, both announced and unannounced, that have been fixed that might switch up how things work. And then introducing the caps for like Thunderstruck, like that kind of destroys Wind Shear in its current state. So we'll see how that survives through. But I think overall some good changes coming there, and like they've already started to buff up like the baseline functionality, or at least baseline damage for a lot of the classes, as they're like taking some things away or incorporating things into the skill trees. So direction overall for the classes is going to be good, but it's just it's a little bit weird, like we haven't even fully gotten season 5 stuff, and then we're seeing stuff from Spiritborn that like we're hoping is going to be introduced to these classes in season 6. So like it partially feels like another in between season while we're just waiting for Vessel of Hatred. But overall I think direction has been good for most of the things they have been adding.
It's an attack speed breakpoint season for me, where I'm just gonna be collecting data, essentially. Not because I don't think season 5 is gonna be fun or whatever, but it's very much what you're saying. Like we're so close to expansion now that this next expansion for people like us will probably be about preparing for next expansion, and a lot of that work is gonna be making sure we have lucky hits, like a good understanding of all of that working now, like how attack speed functions for every spell, which is an undertaking in itself. So I think a lot of people in GMS might just be like, "Yep, let's just collect data this season." And some people like Mippy will be like, "Hey, there's a leaderboard to push for."
Want to know
For sure.
something really fun? Alan?
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah, Spiritborn has a lot of ways to trigger additional hits. Now, does the
Oh,
trigger
yeah.
use the original lucky hit or some other lucky hit? Have
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, like we've already figured out that evade for some reason has 100% lucky chance. So like the skills that you can trigger off evade, are those gonna have 100%, or are they gonna use like the lucky hit chance from the skill tree? I don't know. Like I'm already building a list of things I want to test. I'm sure everyone else is too.
Yeah, I have a feeling that I'll be sitting in the training dam area for about 2 months, just testing all kinds of weird interactions for Spiritborn once it releases. But that's that's what we gotta do to get the relevant information out there to everyone. Um, so how are you feeling with just Spiritborn in general? Like, do you think that it's gonna be? We've talked a little bit about how it's gonna feel probably, but do we think it's gonna be much better than other classes? Like, if
Yes.
you think about like the yeah, but if think about like where how its playstyle is now compared to the classes that sort of have the same playstyle, but like I might be hit or miss. Like, do we think it's going to be much stronger than the other classes, or do we think they're going to get like a decent balance?
I
Oh,
think much stronger. If the numbers stay as they are right now, and then also some of the mechanics that they have are just better than existing ones. Like I look at Resolve, it seems like pretty similar to how Fortify works, but it seems easier to stack, easier to maintain, and then you just flat out get the DR. Like one of the big issues with Fortify right now, especially if you're using it for DR, is like if if you heal above that fortify, you're no longer fortified. So some of those bonuses just go away. Things like that, like Frosty is another nice mechanic for attack speed that like some other classes could use. So I think it just has an easier time doing things that other classes have sort of a challenge to do. So it's going to make the playstyle a lot smoother. And then you can, since you have those baseline things taken care of, like you can just start pushing damage or whatever else you need for the build.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like, um, there's so many things that we have seen from Spiritborn which are also like sort of newish ideas that have not been explored in other classes. Um, you also asked about the power level, right, Ava? What we think it's going to be.
Mhm.
I have to say, this is something that is going to be like it seems very strong, but there's a lot of things that we do not know about the upcoming season 5, firstly, and then the upcoming season 6. Like, I personally do expect that we are going to see a lot of things reworked in season 6, and that might actually shift the power levels of classes and of how the game feels around massively. Further, for season 5 specifically, we know that there are going to be reworked uniques. That's something that one of my persons in my chat also mentioned just now. The design philosophy that we have seen from Blizzard is going to be more in the direction of, okay, we want every build to use two to four uniques is I think the wording that they used. And we have not seen the uniques, like the reworked uniques. We only saw like 1 or 2 per class so far. And there might be a lot of things in store that we just cannot evaluate yet, because if there's like a crazy Twisting Blades unique, for example, that might shift the power level of builds around quite significantly. And we have seen what they tried to do with things like the new dagger, Umbra Crux is the name, I think,
Mhm.
which is a fundamentally new thing in terms of design space that we have seen. Like, it has a functionality that we have not observed before, other than with Victimize, obviously. But going like evaluating the point further, I think judging Spiritborn is something that is very hard to do in terms of its power level, when we do not know where the other classes are going to stand power. If we compare it to current power level, then yes, I would say what we have seen so far seems to indicate that the class is going to be very strong, which is not surprising, as obviously they are releasing a new class. This is the front runner of the expansion. Main selling point: if the class is strong, people will, well, consider, purchasing the expansion to also play the fun class that's strong. But yeah, I definitely think I'm very excited to see where we are going to be in terms of power levels and where Spiritborn is going to rank among these.
One
Yeah,
thing,
I'll go again. Miku, go on.
me again. Okay, then I was just gonna bring up that one thing that Spiritborn has, like over I think any other class right now, is something that we had on monks, I believe, in Diablo 3. I didn't play monk a lot, but they have like the incarnate abilities that pretty much just buff the rest of your kit. You have, for example, some of them are not as great, I don't believe, but some of them, like for example, Toxic Skin, it's amazing for Thorns. Just every time you get hit, you poison enemies automatically, and poison enemies take 100% more Thorns damage. That will probably be balanced, but again, it's just a bonus buff on top of you having a skill that you can use. You're also gonna have counterattack, just gives you flat dodge, and whenever you dodge, you hit your enemy back. There's a lot of power there as well. Not only the abilities themselves, again, like we were talking about, work so well together. Like, you're probably gonna be actively using. You're not gonna only have one main skill. You're probably gonna be using like 3 abilities as your main skill, which at least for Barb we just use one. Like, the others are just to buff the other one completely. They have no other use. They're just there to buff the other. With on at least what I can see from Spiritborn, you'll still gonna have some buffing abilities. Most of the incarnate abilities are actually buff that again give you a passive as well. But you're still gonna want to slot in like 2 or 3 abilities that you're constantly gonna be using as like your main ability. At least from what I can see, I could be wrong.
You know what I feel it's like Sork, right? Sork has all this mobility, right? And when Sork is OP, damage-wise, it's just a stupid OP, right? Because it does the same damage as a barb, but it moves literally 5 times as fast. You know, that's why Sork was the king of Gauntlet. And it feels like Spiritborn if they don't gut its damage, and I doubt they will. It's just gonna be more OP. It's just how it goes, you know. I don't see any other way.
It is interesting as well because we have seen now that they don't really fear changing passives and stuff for specific classes. For
Mhm.
example, we've seen some changes to passives for Rogue now in coming season 5. So it's very possible for them to just do a complete shift. It might take a while depending on what they want to achieve, but it's definitely possible that they could fix some of these issues that we are experiencing, for example, for Rogue, or the mobility issues for Druid that keeps them very slow paced and stuff like that. It does seem like it does feel further away at times than it might actually be in reality. It just depends on the feedback they're receiving from the player base and internally as well. We've briefly mentioned the things that Spiritborn has that other classes don't, and I immediately started thinking about ultimates, because it feels like Spiritborn actually has ultimates, unlike most classes in the game right now, which is you're lucky if you have one. What do you guys think about the ultimate system in Diablo? Do you think that we could change it somehow? Is there any class that needs a new ultimate or two? What do you think? What do you think about it?
I mean,
I don't know more, but better.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's like, um, obviously we all know how much of a meme rogue ultimates are. Funnily, the only reason when rogue ultimates were used were not for what they actually do, but for utility. For example, Shadow Clone on Rogue was used to trigger Unstoppable, for certain situations, or like T-Bolt's will, or to activate like Beastfall Boots. We also had Shadow Clone used in Gauntlet, just because the clone itself copied the Artillery Shrine. But a Rogue ultimate like Rain of Arrows has never been competitively, or like in scenarios where you try to min max and make the best out of a build, been used very much. Death Trap has uses when you try to combine it with like a Peaceful Boots and a prep build or something. It's something that you can do. The pull is kind of useful, but oh, Sanctum disconnected. Well, the pull is
But-
something that has been used, but now is probably going to be superseded by the new chest that we're going to see. And yeah, Sanctum also took the overlay with him.
Oh shit, dude! It kicked me out. Actually,
I'll see if I can get you back in.
I'm coming in. I'm coming back in.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh, there. The overlay is fine again.
There we go.
Nice. Nice. Perfect.
Yeah, like randomly kicked me out. Made me put the password again.
Okay. Yeah, that's basically the thing. Like, I think I'm not super sure how much ultimates are in other classes. I think maybe Deezy, Miku, and Sanctum can more input on this.
On Barb, I think the problem right now is that they are just weak. Like, I think the idea, we have 3 of them. Like, we have Wrath of the Berserker. Right now, it's just a steroid buff that gives you Unstoppable and Berserking, but like, it's just you click, you do more damage, that's it, basically. You can ramp up some damage, but that's about it. So you could like try to double down on like the like I'm berserking, I'm going mad with rage or something. You could try to double down on that fantasy. Some of the other 2 abilities, like Kota, Call of the Ancients. Early on, it's nice. It kind of has the idea early on. You call those guys in, they do a ton of damage for you. Sometimes they buff you as well. Later on, you're just using it for the damage percent and maybe the attack speed, maybe. The other one, the last one that I'm actually forgetting the name right now.
Iron
I
Mouse.
don't. Iron Mouse. I use that ability so much that I completely forgot its name because I use it so much, right? Like it's like it's a massive. That ability just needs to do a lot of damage. Like that ability, the whole thing is that it should do a lot of damage. It feels like you're fucking Kratos up in there, right? With your chains up and stuff, and it does nothing. Literally, never, not even leveling. You don't use it for leveling. Like just buff the on that one. It says just buff the damage. Just make it do a ton of damage. That's it. That one is simple. But yeah, like I think it's doubling down on the fantasies of the ultimate, at least for Barb. It's what it's missing, because right now you don't even think of them as ultimate, just another skill. But which like I think ultimate should feel like massive. When you trigger them, you're going. Okay, you're going ham on the guys, right? but yeah, like it's feeling that punch, right?
What I feel is like it's a numbers game. Let's say I have this ultimate where it kills the entire dungeon, but I can only use it once per character, right? Like if I use it, it gets deleted. The skill, it's bad. I can only use it once. That's like ignoring the fact that most ultimates do no damage, right? Let's say they did do damage. If I can only use them once every 50 seconds, it still sucks, right? Because once every minute, the actual DPS is like nothing. You might as well not use that. You might as well buff your skill that you use every single, like not even per second, use it multiple times per second, and that's gonna give you more damage. So either ultimates have to do, well, first they have to do an appropriate amount of damage, and then they have to have an appropriate uptime, right? And right now they just don't have either. Sure, some builds can get the ultimate with a pretty good uptime, but then the damage sucks. Or let's take for druids, Grizzly Rage. It used to be really good at the start of the game, and you could keep it up almost indefinitely. And then they nerf the uptime, they nerf the damage it gives. Now they nerf the uptime again. Like, why would you use it now? It's like I just don't get it. It's just not influential enough. You gotta use other stuff. So I'm not sure why they have these supposedly powerful spells, which are not powerful and have shit uptime. Like, why would I ever use that? I don't know. I just don't get it. It's not that hard of a problem to solve. Honestly, you just gotta give them an appropriate uptime and some good damage, and make it so it's worth focusing on. Like, you want to have a Rain of Arrows build. Okay, well, then you probably gotta make it so Rain of Arrows can be casted maybe like once every 2 seconds, and when you cast it, it hits fucking hard. That's it. It's not that hard.
You
It'd be
mean
great
to
to be able
tell
have
me?
charges, like alt charges on raid arrows or something, if you want to use it as your main skill. Like
Yeah, we
that
have
could work
seen
pretty
this.
well.
We have exactly seen this ult charges. Like Spiritborn gets ult charges on the Eagle ultimate, which is a super cool concept, I think.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you mean to tell me that Petrify, which is a 6-second duration, 50% decrease multiplier, is not great to have a 50-second cooldown? Really?
It actually has like a way shorter cooldown, or you can get it to a way
Yeah.
shorter cooldown, and it's probably the one that's used the most now for Druid. Like it's pretty good, but also the current state of Druid means you have to have 3 companions on your bar, so you're making a build with 3 skills. So there's not always a lot of room for it. Next season, I'm sure alts will get used a lot more. Like you've got, I believe, Bjorntust, I believe is the name of it, Bjorntust Ring. Like Cataclysm can have like a 25 or so second duration, something like that. And I think the ring goes up to 100% extra damage. Like it's going to go on basically any spender build. Petrify, I feel like that Cataclysm just going to overtake Petrify.
Yeah,
With
it's the
that.
same but better.
Yeah, it's just, it does the same thing because Petrify, it's only crit damage. It does pretty good at like refreshing your energy, or not energy, spirit when you need it, but I don't. There's no reason to use it over Cataclysm. Grizzly Rage got destroyed by the crit changes, and they still haven't reworked that aspect. I believe Rampaging Werebeast, yeah, still haven't changed that back to being multiplicative crit damage. And then, like you said, Sanctum, the uptime thing where the cooldown doesn't start until it ends, like that. That's like the main reason to use Grizzly Rage, to try and stay in that amped up version constantly. So, and then what's the last ult? I'm even forget. Oh, Lacerate. Yeah, that I have nothing to say about Lacerate.
It buffs companions. It buffs companion damage. It has a use. It has a
There you
use.
go.
That's true. That's true.
yeah,
Petrify doesn't, so it's actually
Fair enough. There you go.
And-
It has a build.
And I do think like that's one of the problems, that ultimates right now should feel like I should be able to sort of at least have one that is strong for basically any build archetype that I could use for my class, or like any niche you could come up with. But you have problems, especially with Druid. Druid is notorious for having tag issues, like skill tag issues. For those unaware, for example, Companions basically doesn't allow any multiplier to work for them because they lack the appropriate skill tags. It means that if you hover over the skill, it says companions, and it might say werewolf if you're using aspect of the alpha and stuff like that. And those skill tags sometimes doesn't work, which has the consequence of stuff not working with that skill. And certain multipliers like Petrify just doesn't work for companions. So you're left in this really weird situation where your build might not even have a viable ultimate, and at that point it's like maybe we should kind of look over how the ultimates work to begin with. I started talking a little bit about a ultimate system last podcast episode, where you basically build up a bar and then you can use it, and then you might be like empowered for a few seconds and then that bar disappears and you do that sort of cycling. I heard there was something in like last epoch or something that had like a similar system. Something like that could be good, because that circumvents the problem of like I have this long cooldown that I have to reduce in order to make a ultimate viable. I don't think that should be the case. I think like if you're pressing your ultimate, you're like, okay, I'm really powerful for like 15 seconds or something, and then you could have some downtime. But in a fast-paced game, it's like, yes, I cleared 101 in 2 minutes. I got to use my ultimate 3 times. That feels a little bit weird and weak.
That is exactly like this is sort of a thing that is also a design question. Like, if ultimates are ultimates either are two things. Either they're so good that you want to use the ultimate skill in every single build. If there's an ultimate that fits into the build, you'll probably use it just because it's so good. Or an ultimate skill is not good enough and has like the current state we have now, and ultimates are basically never used. So when you design ultimates, you have to think about, okay, if I make the ultimate skill like really, really good, the likelihood that people will include this in their builds is very high. And that might mean that you will see an ultimate skill in every single build, which basically then means, okay, every single build essentially has one skill slot less to use because the ultimate is just so good that you are just defaulting to using it. I think what a cool solution to this issue would be to have the ultimate skill, for example, on a separate slot in the skill bar that is designated for it. This would not impede the build variety because you would just use one of the ultimates at any point, because, well, why even design ultimates when they are not supposed to be used? And I think this could be a way to open up a little bit of build variety and essentially having the ultimate be a, well, sort of 7th skill that has a designated hotkey that you can allocate it to, and then you, well, can open up the design space just a little bit more, because if everyone has ultimates, well, why not make something really cool out of them? And I think this is something that they took to heart when they designed the Spiritborn, where they wanted to make sure that the ultimates that Spiritborn gets are definitely something that you're going to use. You can also always only use one of the ultimates, so there's no way to combine multiple of them. So there's no concern if I make all of the ultimates strong, a player cannot use all of them at the same time. So it's kind of cool to have something like this. I just think that the system that they use for them right now, where it basically occupies a slot in your skill bar that you can then not use otherwise, while only having 6 slots, which is for Rogue, sometimes I want to have 9 slots and the ultimate is usually not one of them. Is basically something where I think they can definitely try to find solutions that make this a little bit more easier.
A quick note on that as well is like the problem when we're starting to compare different classes as well is that you look at Rogue, you have, all right, we have Shadow Clone, which is essentially literally your like wolf companion. It has the same functionality, it has the same damage conversion and everything. Like it doesn't work with any aspect, and it doesn't take all these stats, like great. It's basically companion wolves. But then you have stuff like Death Trap, which is, gonna see pull-ins by other classes now that is way less investment than a big skill on your bar that has like a massive cooldown. Spiritborn will have it on like a 12-second cooldown, I think it is.
You can
Yeah.
have it bound to your lip, which is your
Yeah.
sword. There's and you can get like you can reduce sword cooldown to 0 if you want quite easily. And
Yeah.
it's just spam sword and it pulls in, spam sword, it pulls in, spam sword, it pulls in constantly.
Yeah.
Basically, that's not
And you can have soar as your evade as well. I don't
Yeah.
know if those.
yeah,
if those
yeah,
unis
that's the
work
build.
too,
That's
but
the
it's
build.
So we have this problem where it's like if you're making these super powerful skills, it can't just be like the base kit for some other class. It feels really, really bad. Even though like sorcerer aren't like doesn't have the strongest ultimates by any means. Like at least when you're using them, they sort of feel unique in a sense. Like you have a basically big attack steroid in unstable currents. You have what's it called, Inferno, which pulls in a little bit, does like some damage, and then you have is it Deep Freeze?
Yeah.
I don't even remember what it's called. Yeah, Deep Freeze.
Yeah,
Deep
That
Freeze.
at least is like you're invulnerable and you do like damage and you have like synergies playing off of that. So like at least like even though they might not be strong, they still have at least identities that are very like skill specific. There aren't any other classes that have those skills as a part of their usual kit for the most part. So with that in mind, with how classes work right now, with how ultimates work and everything, if you were to take, if you could sit down with a developer and be like, hey dude, I want this one thing introduced to my class because my class needs some help right now when I've seen how fluid and fun Spiritborn is. What would you basically introduce to the game for your class? It could be anything. It could be like ultimate revamp. It could be design philosophy. Like one thing that is like kind of condensed, so we don't speak about this for like 20 minutes.
You mean 20 hours?
One concept.
think-
Oh, you
Yeah,
can
go,
start.
go.
You can start.
Okay. Like I think more ways for skills to interact with each other, because right now it just we have a spender. Maybe the spender is like blocking the twisters, the dust devils, but that's it. We just have that ability that's doing that one thing, and everything else again is focusing on that. Like having ways for abilities to work with each other, like I think would make it so much more fun and like I guess we do have like the charge with the procs rend with the unique ring that I'm forgetting the name now, but I think that's basically the only thing. Everything else just works by itself, and you use everything else to buff that one thing, and that's it. All the builds, almost all of them, just go for that, and I'd like to see some more diversity, and having abilities interact with each other, I think can help that, because like if using this ability, well, these two abilities interact well with this one, so I might as well try to make all of them strong.
I think my one thing would be, so they just changed the main stat scaling for a lot of classes to offset the different amounts of weapons. Would have liked to see if they just made every class have the same amount of slots as rogue, and then have barb as a special one to have an extra two-hand. I mean, in D3, I'm pretty sure you could dual wield two-handed weapons, something
Yeah,
like
they
that, and you only hold in two hands like the mighty weapon. So like that could still be a special thing that they had. Just because I touched on it before, but like there's a lot of cool aspects and uniques that devs are introducing, and I'm sure it feels bad for us and for them that like they introduce something and no one touches it pretty much because it just doesn't fit into the current into like the current framework or current build. Like utility aspects, especially on rogue, for example, there are a ton of them that they're basically just damage aspects. So why would I take a utility aspect that doesn't do damage when I can take one that is going to do damage and actually bump up my top end damage, things like that. So just giving more space to play around with some of those some of the cool things that they are adding into the game.
I guess what would I want them to add to Rogue? I want them to make the build, the class, more focused on clones and stealth. That's it. I really just want that, because I don't want it to be a generic class. When I think rogue, like when rogue is done well in other games, I feel it generally has a lot to do with stealth and clones, and sometimes even bleeds. And this rogue doesn't even have bleed. You know, like what's up with that? So that's what I
Where's the
feel.
rupture? Where's the rogue
Yeah.
rupture from Wall?
We have
Wow,
Rupture. That's ours. That's Barb.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah,
rogue thing.
yeah, I definitely agree with Sanctum. And to also answer the question, what I would like to see introduced for Rogue Forex specifically, I think Rogue's biggest weakness is that it doesn't really fit into the typical class fantasy that you have of a rogue right now. Yes, we have this agile character that is dashing around, shadow stepping to targets, but the actual playstyle sometimes does not really reflect how rogues are usually perceived in other games, in other franchises. Like when you play ranged rogue, you still end up going melee. When you play a melee rogue, you sort of play it more like a bruiser than you do play it like an agile backstabby kind of class. And this is a bit weird because for me, the class fantasy for rogue is a very fast, agile, class cannon-y, high single damage or low AoE damage character. And the funny thing is that single target damage, outside of just insane amount of poison dot stacking, is Rogue's biggest weakness currently, and has also been its biggest weakness throughout the entirety of the game. So to conclude, one thing that I would like them to add to Rogue is a ultimate skill that is specifically designed to take out a single target, like an assassination type of thing that you can imbue, that you can use with a decent cooldown that maybe has like a charge or two, potentially. But just give us something to be able to deal with single targets without basically screwing our entire build around for it. Like, for example, when we did speedruns in Season 1, the biggest thing holding us back from beating Barbs in speedruns and Tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons was us not being able to kill Nightmare Dungeon bosses in an appropriate amount of time. Barb would walk in, hammer smash the ground, and the boss is dead. We had to poison them up for 10 seconds for them to actually die, and we tried to pull all the tricks out of the book, like use all of Ava's Poison Beam and Bible to somehow find a way to deal with bosses quickly, but there was just no way. It was just impossible. And a rogue hitting a single target for such an extended amount of time just felt wrong. And this is something that I really would like to see the class to involve some sort of single target specification in some sort of way. I think this is something that is just missing from the class fantasy.
I think my thing is not so much for one class in particular, but every class. I would like them to show all relevant information about all skills on the tooltip and in the character sheet. I don't want to see you do 2 attacks per second and it's not even close to 2 attacks per second because everything scales off of that number individually. I don't want to see any really weird inflated crit damage values that doesn't actually do anything. I don't want to see lucky hit that shows like I'm going to lucky hit at least once over this duration, and apparently then Cataclysm has 100% lucky hit. I don't want to see that. I want to see, okay, this ability when it deals damage, I have this chance to lucky hit. That's what I want to see. I want to see that this attack it will attack this many times per second. Just give us correct information. I think Sanctum has disappeared again.
Yeah.
For some,
Yep.
the
Okay,
cam has
fair.
disappeared again.
Dude.
So with our classes being as they are, we can't really change much, and everything can change 14 times before we arrive in the expansion. What do you feel about the end game as we know it? We know that we're gonna get some sort of raid of some description. We don't know much about it yet. But how do you feel about the current end game, and do you think that the addition of a raid will basically make enough end game for us to be sort of entertained for an entire season?
I think there's a big problem with the raid, at least in Diablo. As someone that mythic raided WoW, like I was on a top 100 build, top 100 guild or something. Like it's just like it's not the type of playstyle you're gonna see from someone that's playing WoW, that's playing Diablo. You're just going in, killing things, bashing them, whatever, and go on. Like while in a raid, you should be cooperating with other people. Now sometimes you just don't do damage for like 15 seconds because you're doing a mechanic. I don't think Diablo players will enjoy just going the hell away to drop off some fucking meteor or something, and then walking all the way back to the boss and doing all those mechanics that they need to be a specific place for something to happen, or else the raid is gonna wipe. Saving certain cooldowns for certain moments, so you can actually, when the boss just gonna do a massive damage, you stack all your defensives so you can actually survive. That type of mechanic, I don't think it's something that a Diablo player is gonna enjoy. So either they're gonna have that, and a lot of players are gonna be a bit turned off from the raids, or there's just gonna be like a damage, sponge that you go in, you hit a lot, and eventually it dies, which is basically what we have world boss. They aren't even damage sponges at this point, right? They were.
I
Man,
think
I hope
my
you're wrong.
I hope they're interesting. I think the problem I see coming up with the raids, most of my raiding experience in games is either from Borderlands or from Destiny. And big issue with those is like the raids just became farming activities. So instead of just being able to go fight a boss and farm what I need, I have to go through like a 10, 15, 20, sometimes like 40-minute raid just to have a chance at getting a piece of gear, while it still also has mechanics that can instantly wipe the party, things like that. So it's going to be a difficult balancing act to try and make it seem like a worthwhile activity over doing something else, while not also feeling like you're kind of bashing your head against the wall and spending a ton of time on something that you're not being well rewarded for. The other thing that I worry about is the difficulty of it, because I'm sure they want a lot of the player base to be able to do the raid. If they make it too difficult, certain builds might get locked out of it. You might have people gating others, like trying to ask like what build they're running to make sure that you're able to do the content. I don't it It might develop a little bit of a toxic environment, but then on the other hand, let's say if it's something you only do once, like then there's not really a huge reason to like be hyping it up as much as it's currently being hyped up. I'm hoping that it's not just going to be one raid. I hope maybe there are multiple ones that maybe you cycle through. Maybe it gives a weekly reward or something for doing the raid. So you don't have to do it a bunch of times, but you get a guaranteed cash, or something like that. So I think that there are ways to make it really interesting for players, but definitely going to be a balancing act they have to work through.
Yeah. Please go ahead,
Sorry.
Sanctum.
Okay. I feel like what system raid that I feel like they should emulate for this game is old school RuneScape raids. You know, because you can. So if you're skilled enough and you have enough gear, you can even do them solo, right?
Yeah,
And
that'd be great.
yeah, and but they're meant to do it, in a party, right? For normal people, you can do it in a party. Sure, they're hard when they start out, and then people learn the mechanics, so they get better gear, and then they're not as hard that you can farm them. And if you're really skilled, you can farm them solo, and it is worth farming. Sure, in RuneScape, there's a million things worth farming, but these, if you're good and you have the required gear, they are worth farming. And I feel like it's at least when I played, I don't play anymore, but when I played it, it felt like it was really well designed in the context of the game, and it fits here because RuneScape, sure, it's a multiplayer game, but it's also a solo game, right? It's a bit like Diablo. Well, even obviously more multiplayer than Diablo, but there's a lot of similarities there in the way that it is. So I feel like it's a good system to emulate.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, we also saw Diablo 4 starting out as a game that was mostly like 99% of the time played solo during the first two seasons. just because there were not much incentive to actually group up other than to maybe raise to level 100 quickly at the start. With Season 2, we saw the introduction of bosses that did reward playing in a group because you could share materials and do all these things. And then we had like the vaults and the, what was it called? Vault of the, what was it, Vault of the Loom? Where you had Uber Malphas that also rewarded group play quite a bit. In Season 4, we then had a step back from that, making pits unattractive again for group play. So I'm very excited to see how they are going to do that kind of thing in the expansion. Like, I hope that raids will not really become a super mandatory activity where there's like exclusive content from it, because some people may not want to group up to get those things, and if it's impossible to do solo and they then cannot reap the rewards because they do not want to play in a group, I think that would be a little bit bad, because you would exclude people who do not like to group up. And I think this is not something that Diablo is sort of known for. I mean, in the end, we're playing Diablo 4, we're not playing World of Diablo. Even though you can take a lot of inspiration from working raids and other games, as Tobias in my chat also pointed out. Like, I think he wants to mention WoW in that regard. As far as I know, many of the old raids in WoW can be done solo. Even though, like, when I remember back in Legion, you could actually run one of the lower tiers on your own as well. And as Sanctum mentioned, I think this is something that would be very beneficial to the game. If you're skilled enough and you have enough gear and you have a particular build that is potentially exclusively tuned to do such a raid on your own, well, sure. Why shouldn't you be able to do it? I think this is a cool concept.
I do think it's a interesting way to sort of make clans more like useful in the game right now, because for the most part it's just a achievement spam with the occasional chatter. That's my experience of clans in Diablo 4. And having like clans that were like, oh, like active clans, we're farming together, we're doing the raid together, sort of thing. I think that helps the community feeling in Diablo, which is something that if you're playing just alone might actually help you have more fun in the game. You might just be super introverted and get panicked if someone types to you, and in which case you should be able to do the raid alone as well in some capacity. But I do think that one of the things we've been talking about like very long ago, I think, like on Sanctuary and in general, has been having something cool that clans could do that has some sort of progression or like at least some sort of reward. It doesn't have to be player power. It could just be cosmetics. Like you go in and kill a boss together and you get like a fancy crown, whatever
Sure.
you want to be like have, or like
Wings.
some horse or wings, whatever. Like the power of cosmetics in games like this, I wouldn't undersell it, especially for seasonal content. Having like a specific wing style every single season, like if you clear the raid, like something like that wouldn't be necessarily bad. It would just add something to do every season, if you would want to.
I think.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
like, I think one of the biggest problems that it's being more apparent the more we talk about it is that the game lacks any sort of social system. The clan is basically, again, just like a thing you have over your head. That's it. Maybe like I haven't talked to anyone in my clan in the last year. We talked in the beginning. No, we don't talk there. We talk on Discord. Right? There's no reason to be there. Like grouping with other people, unless you have like friends that are playing at the moment, you just go on Discord again. You don't have pretty much no way to look into the game. You don't use the trade chat to looking for Duriel Rota. Basically, no one does that, right? And like Mipi was saying, like he was talking about, and I remember one thing. Barb shouts, like which possibly could be like a support build that's actually being run somewhat, but not necessarily because of the shouts. Have reduced duration on your allies. Basically, half the duration on your allies. Like that's super against group play because there's no reason for that, right? Unless you want to disincentivize group play. And like Mipi was saying, in the beginning, they're kind of going more towards that solo play thing. Then they wanted to make more group play. Now again in season 4, maybe not so much we'll see. But another game that actually came to mind while we were talking about it, that's basically like Diablo but does raids, like with 8 people as well, is not Last Depot, Lost Ark. Lost Ark, some of the raids are a complete miss, but a lot of them are fun. But what they do have like most of their classes are DPS, and they have some dedicated support. I think Paladin and some other one, and I think they also have a new one right now because I haven't played it in a long while now. But they do have dedicated support classes. Diablo doesn't really have that, but if they actually allow like classes like Barb and Druid that do have like a lot of supportive skills to actually allow those to properly scale with group and maybe even buff other members more than they buff the user, potentially that could also help with like raid thing.
Yeah, I think this is a very good point. If you consider that if raids are supposed to be a more prominent activity in the game, and group play is doing something is going to be more important, then I think it is important to consider reworking a few of the skills from certain classes to benefit group play a bit more. Like traps from Rogue could, for example, like caltrops could be something. The buff could be global, or like debuffing the enemies could be something that is also good for the other party members, for example. And as you said, like shots on Barb, and maybe heals on Druid. This is something that we can definitely see in the future, and I'm very excited to see how they're going to do something like this.
You know, it may just. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, the same thing happens for Druid with some things. Like Blood Hell doesn't affect allies normally. You need to spend an aspect to do that. I think not sure about Cyclone Armor off the top of my head, but yeah, it's just there's no reason to have to spend an aspect on something like that just to be able to affect allies. So
I was gonna say, it might just maybe because of my history, you know, playing games. I've always played multiplayer games, so like I mean, even D2, which is one of the first games I played, it was quite social, you know, because you join these 8-man, Bale runs or Diablo runs or all that stuff. You had like PvP lobbies, and it's crazy that D2 was more social than D4. I kind of miss that. I know a lot of players kind of hate like, you know, being.
Sanctum, your mic just dropped now.
Oh my god.
No, but you're back now. You're not back now.
Okay.
It swapped to your other mic for a second, so we could hear your proper mic, and then it
yeah.
disappeared.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's going
sorry.
on there, but I was saying, I'm so used to playing multiplayer games, and it's so much more fun to me. It's actually one of the things that like PoE is a great game, but eventually I get bored because I'm just playing alone. I don't know if that happens to anyone else, but I welcome any multiplayer content. You know, it's fun for me.
I'm actually the opposite. I usually try to play things solo and see what I can do on my own. So something like a raid, if there's no way for me to do it solo like that, that sucks. I won't be able to do it. I know some other people are speculating that like the mercenaries that are going to be there for Vessel of Hatred is something that you'll be able to use for the raid. But yeah, for me, I'm always I do agree that social things should be a little bit easier, right? Like no group finder in the game for over a year is pretty bad. Like if there's a group finder, I would probably use that just because it's seamless. It's pretty easy to find a group to play with for things like that. So that's usually my experience playing multiplayer stuff. But I do see how like yeah, being able to play with a group and stuff like that, trying to be social with others, and it just I don't know why it doesn't happen much in D4. Like I mean there is the chat, and D2 had the same thing, but it doesn't get used as much. It's mainly just spam trade chat and see what you find in there.
I do think that the mercenary system is definitely interesting and not something we've touched upon yet on this podcast overall. What do you guys think that the implication of having the mercenaries is going to be? Is it basically going to be D3 companions or like whatever, like all over again? Do you think it's going to be stronger, weaker?
It will depend on how they are designed and how they are balanced, right? Because pretty much in D3 they're just holding items so you could do more damage. That's basically it. Most of their skills, maybe there was one or another that was somewhat influential, but most of the time they were just there to be buffed for you. Depending on how things are done on D4, if they actually have some unique abilities, or again, if they have like better AI, they actually have their own skills that they know when to use and stuff like that. Maybe, but it will completely depend on where their head is at right now, I guess.
Nothing could go wrong with pet AI in Diablo, right? But
I hope they learned from the Seneschal pet, how to implement it a little bit more, work better with the class itself, not fully separate some of the bonuses out. But I mean, Seneschal was okay, but like I always said, it's basically just became a buff bot, and I feel like that's almost always what happens with permanent companions. So having them be stronger for maybe certain activities or whatever, maybe a route that they go so that they can actually put more power into them. So we'll see. I think they'll hopefully be interesting. Thinking about D2 companions, like those ones were I feel like they were more interesting, but I haven't touched D2 in a long time, so I may be misremembering, may have the nostalgia goggles on. And Sanctum is
Yeah,
out again,
same.
it looks.
Oh my. Wait, I figured it out. I know what it is. So I have this extension that suspends like tabs, that you're not
Oh.
using, so they don't consume
sense.
RAM. And since I'm like a tab hoarder,
Yeah,
that's what's going on.
I've seen your amount of tabs once sometimes when we did some Discord calls. Man,
Yeah.
this guy has like 200 tabs open at the same time or something. It's absolutely
My wife
crazy.
is the same. It's crazy.
I did the same.
It's a disease, dude.
If I have more than 10, I'm panicking.
I have multiple tabs and multiple browsers like open at the same time.
Yeah, same.
That's like an ADHD thing, I think, or something.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I
mean,
do
yeah.
have it.
Yeah.
Well, what I wanted to say, what I wanted to add to the discussion about like the mercenary system, what I kind of do like is systems like the Essential. I think it was pretty well executed, in terms of like like the design was good. It didn't feel overpowered. It did feel like it did help you in certain situations. It did feel like it gave you certain benefits when you played around it. And I think that's great. What I do not want to see is something like the D3 follower system, because essentially you try to use items on them because you could fully equip them in a way that was absolutely not intended. So you try to stack different procs through them, and you basically try to make them abuse these items as much as you possibly could. I think if they do something similar to this, it will definitely be a case of, okay, how can we possibly try to find a way to find unintended interactions with these followers? And I think this is something that has also riddled the Seneschal in Season 3, where there were like instances of people stacking up to deal billions of damage. And systems like these are always prone to have issues that produce these sort of results. And I do want them to try to go more into the utility part rather than giving them damaging abilities that can be abused.
Yeah, I think the same thing. Like in actuality, like if they do allow us to equip them in some way, it's just gonna be a let's find out. Do they lucky hit? Are we gonna equip that? Like, is that the sixth like source that we can use to lucky hit or stagger faster? Like, we're gonna have a lot of technical problems that might not be easy for them to sort of predict, I suppose. It also depends on how like they are implemented overall. If they're just companions, then some of the problems would probably go away with just their base coding, but I suppose we'll just have to see. Do we think that, like, if they don't add any more endgame, would you guys be happy about the current endgame in Diablo 4?
No, at least for me, no.
But what
I
what
think
would you want?
um I feel like there should be more pinnacle bosses that are actually pinnacle. I know it's not gonna happen because people complain and they get nerfed, but I feel like it needs more real bosses. Pit, I guess it's an improvement, but we're just farming 101s. So improve the difficulty scaling there, like reward difficulty curve. The new horde mode is actually pretty cool, and I like they're gonna introduce T9 and then T10 later on. So it's pretty fun. And from what it was looking in the PTR, which I hopefully stays that way, you have to be quite tanky. Like it's not just a DPS check. You gotta be quite tanky to live through them. So that's gonna be fun. Actually, really, if it doesn't take 1 hour, like took in the PTR, then it's gonna be really fun. I enjoy that. Yeah, it's mostly that. I guess the co-op rates depends how they design them. Will be good too. And then, so I feel like companions are good because also part of the end game is gearing out your character, right? And if you gotta gear out a mercenary, that's another element of gearing, and I kind of like it. I like extending the lifetime of my character. I'm not like Mippy who maybe enjoys getting that last 0.00001%, for and running the same pit for 500 tries. But
Pit Part 2 login, brother.
yeah. But I do enjoy getting my characters like 99.9% of the way there, And the longer that takes, the more fun it is for me.
Think for me, Endgame, the activities are good. I think my issue right now is resources from those activities, right? It feels like you always have to take a step back, like you either have to go back to do Hell Tides or maybe you have to go do Legion, stuff like that. So either if we can make a way to make those more difficult so that it's more engaging to do those, or if just doing like the existing endgame activities can maybe supplement and give you some of those materials instead. So like if I'm pushing pits, like maybe it gives me more materials, so I don't have to go back and do those other things that my character has outgrown. I think something interesting that could be implemented. I know we're going to be getting profane cage back, and it's going to stack up to 3 times if that could work or something like that could work on other activities. So like if I want to challenge myself more, if I'm gonna go out and do a legion or something like that, like I have the ability to do that. So kind of lets me create more of what I want out of endgame, while still allowing me to still progress meaningfully doing things like pushing pit or doing infernal hordes.
I think one
I-
interesting solve to this, like in general, if you think about like the Infernal Hordes, right, where we're gonna get to choose a chest at the end, what about if more content had that sort of like you could make a choice at the end what you sort of needed? Like it doesn't have to be a lot of the rewards, but at least some of them. So for example, if you're doing pit, but you want to do pit because you're pushing, you don't necessarily need the masterworking materials, but maybe you need Angel's Breath that you could choose to pick up some, I don't know, enchanting chest or something at the end, or like masterworking chest or gold chests. You could pick maybe 3 options like we have in Infernal Hordes, and get appropriate rewards from that. Could potentially be a solve. Doesn't have to be for every end game content, but maybe something like Pit that we do so frequently that it could be an option.
Think that would be cool, letting you be able to target more of what you need. Like it gives the players more agency instead of just having to rely fully on the RNG. Like I know, not this season, but the past season, like they threw all of the boss items or all the new uniques onto Beast and Ice, which already terrible to farm, and now you have way less chance to get what you want. Um, I don't know if they'll ever do that. Maybe like allowing you to choose a specific slot, or maybe like a type of unique you want. I don't see it happening for that. But yeah, I agree. With some of the other activities, like choosing what you want, maybe that chest gives you more of what you would normally get.
Like, in terms of in-game activities, I think what they are doing, they should keep doing. Basically, like for example, season 2, we had like the blood harvesters that was kind of implemented into the game in the form of actually expanding what Tide was, and just made Tide so much better. We have like the gauntlet, which was basically bolts because it's like a timed activity that you want to do as fast as you can, as precisely as you can, so you can get the top rank. We have now pits that are kind of an evolution of AOZ as well, right? To a certain degree, they're a bit more different, but I think that's the right thing to do. Like, add more things so more people have like different ways to engage with the game in the way they most enjoy. Because, for example, I never touch Gauntlet at all because it's just not my type of thing. I just like to make builds strong, make sure they are able to tank things and kill things, like the hardest things there are in the game, right? That's like why I like Pit a bit. I don't like the fishing part of it. I think that's something they have to fix. But like the Pit itself as a concept, I like a lot. But adding more modes like the Hordes, I'll likely like it a lot as well because it's a type of gameplay I enjoy as long as they fix the problems that it has. But yeah, again, adding more types of like end game systems that people can engage with depending on their preference, I think it's good because at the end of the day, that's just gonna make more people happier because they can, if they don't like this, they can just go play that, and that will keep them engaged with the game besides the season part. Because a lot of people just come to a season, next week they're out. They don't care about Diablo anymore till 3 months down the line, right?
Yeah. You know what I feel like they're doing really wrong? So even though I'm gonna probably like the new Infernal Horde game mode, I feel like they gotta stop introducing game modes and they gotta make it, for example, let's say a portal appears in your pit and the pit takes you, to another map and like other games, other RPGs do, and stuff like that, where like you got events inside a map and then there's a steady flow to your gameplay. Like you're not changing gameplays. You're playing one, your normal mode, and then it extends that, it adds variance, and then but without stopping the flow. Like you keep on, you join the portal, you keep on killing. There's some rare mobs, maybe there's a boss, and then maybe another portal can spawn. If there's like season 20, and there's more mechanics, but that the type of gameplay I want, instead of just like, well, here's pits, here's Nightmare Dungeons, here's the Pearl Horde, here's AOC, here's Gauntlet. Like, integrate these mechanics, especially seasonal mechanics. I feel should be integrated into the current game.
Yeah, this is exactly the problem that we have seen in season 4. Nightmare Dungeons became obsolete so quickly that after a certain point, when you have your glyphs that you wanted leveled to a certain extent, you basically never touch Nightmare Dungeons again, unless you specifically needed rune shards to fuel your 6,000 rune shards that you need to open your 700 pits that you have to fish for. But putting that aside, there was basically no reason to do Nightmare Dungeons again. And I think this is exactly a good point that Sanctum mentioned. The game modes do feel very disconnected from each other, and I think it is okay to have certain game modes reward certain things more. But I think it is also important to keep to give every game mode the possibility to access to materials, many different things. Maybe not many, but hey, just drop one Angel Breath in addition to what drops from the pit right now. Just a single one. I don't care if it's only a single one, but if I run 30 pits, I just do want to get something other than masterworking materials and like few items that I'm probably never going to use because the rewards there could definitely be a little bit better. And I think this is something that we I think you compared it to other games. What I also would like to see is more ways to have these sort of portals. Like for example, in D3, we often had goblins that spawned and then spawned portals. Like one goblin would spawn a portal to the vault where you get insane amounts of gold. You can, if you kill the goblin and this portal appears, you have the optional choice to go into the portal or to just ignore it and keep blasting whatever you do. And I think systems like these are pretty good, and I think especially for some cosmetic rewards, this could be something that is done. Like have a goblin that kill it. It opens a portal to whatever Shire, right? And at the end of that thing, you have a chance to drop a certain cosmetic or something, or like a ton of materials or anything that could potentially be of interest to you. But you can also choose to ignore it because it's not the end of the world if you don't do it, because maybe you're not interested maybe you're not interested in mechanics, or maybe you have so many materials that you're like, another 30 angel breath or something will not. And I think this is something where there's a lot of potential for things to design for them, and I really hope we get and on another tangent, I really hope we get these different goblins back that do different things, and not only like a single goblin that, well, drops like a little bit of everything, but not really something exciting. And I really want something like that back into.
I think one of the interesting conversations about this as well is like, I'm thinking back to when I pushed in Diablo 3, right? And I kind of tried to think about why that felt like a more I don't know, well-gelled sort of experience compared to this. Because a lot of like the times I got frustrated with Diablo 3 was essentially when I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go on an expedition and get these caches now because I need Ring of Royal Grandeur or whatever, like all of those
Bounties.
detours that I had to do all the times, like the bounties and stuff, they felt like more of a drag than anything. But when you optimize, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna do. I think it was like tier 10 or whatever when back when I actually played it. But like you were like, okay, I'm gonna make a build for this. I'm just gonna speed through this with my armory that I could use to quickly get this build, and then I could just go and blast it, kind of thing, right? Like that. It felt like a smooth experience, and then you can just like, okay, I'm just gonna click one button, and now I can go Greater Rifts, and it's gonna be optimized build for that, and I can just do that cycle. That was basically like I did 2 modes for 99% of my gameplay. I just did Greater Rifts, and I did normal Rifts, and I did that cycle, and it was cohesive in a way. Now it's like, yeah, I'm gonna have to do Infernal Hordes, I'm gonna have to do Helltide, I'm gonna have to do Legions for materials, I'm also gonna have to live in my glyphs in Nightmare Dungeons to then do Pit. It's like system after system after system that I agree with Sanctum. It's like it's way too disjointed right now. It doesn't feel like one game. It feels like you have a bunch of mini games. It feels a lot like when you did anyone here play World of Warcraft, Worlds of Draenor when it was released?
Yeah. Not
Where it
connected
was
to this.
basically like that's exactly what it felt like. You were basically just doing mini games in the game, and then you just like did your thing that you wanted to do on like a weekly basis because then you were capped, so you couldn't do it. Then you went back to do mini games in your garrison for the entire week. I think like the problem is when anything that takes away from the game experience of playing the game, like doing the things that are enjoyable, it becomes more and more of a drag.
Yeah,
Like farming rune charts.
like I'm actually rethinking now. Like my point of view mostly came from like PoE, but I think one of the biggest thing PoE has that Diablo does not is that if I don't want to engage with, for example, with Delve, that's like, for those that don't know, is like an activity. You go in, you push a cart, and then you do an event. You push another cart, you do another event, and you keep going down to the mines. And the deeper you go, the more rewards you get, and the harder the content becomes. But for a lot of people, it's kind of boring. If I don't want to do that, I just farm the content I like, and I trade my stuff for currency, and then I use that currency to buy stuff from Delve. I don't have to engage with the content at all, but I can still get the rewards from the content. Which in Diablo, if you want to trade, you have to use a third-party site, and it's a whole problem. A lot of times you might get scammed, and it's a problem, right? And by the way, we did have like a time that Nightmare Dungeons were good this season, and that was on the Goblin event, because you could just get massive amount of loot, which you couldn't trade. I thought I was gonna make it big. I had like a 1,000 bags to open, and then you couldn't trade the thing. I was kind of sad, but it was actually rewarding for a week. But
I think if you can get the feeling of if we had a 2-system like endgame system, gameplay loop where it was like you did Nightmare Dungeons to be able to unlock the pit, like that's the cycle you do when you're pushing, like you get some material to open the pit and that's it, like that's the thing. But you can also get a realistic amount of like decent reward from doing the speed farming as well. Like you could actually get like uber uniques, or like if you increase the nightmare, like the tier that you're doing, then you could increase the probability of getting like GA items or anything like that. That made it worth farming Nightmare Dungeons and doing pit, like having that tangent system, I think like it would probably feel better to be also forced to do those systems. Because right now it's like I don't really feel any enjoyment just grinding nightmare dungeons to open the pit. Like that doesn't feel good.
That's
And realistically, you're not gonna get stuff either.
the thing with Nightmare Dungeons. They are excellent for one thing, and that's getting XP. Like if you actually get proper events, Nightmare Dungeons are just the best way for you to get XP.
10
Problem
hours.
is,
Woohoo.
yeah, but yeah, that's a problem. You like, for example, I don't think anyone wants for the Paragon system to come back because that just felt like a drag at some point. But what if instead of Paragon system you had something like after you get another level, or maybe after you get 10, 50 levels or whatever point you want to set it on, you just get like a guaranteed 3G item or a guaranteed unique item or whatever. Like the reward can be, swapped around and whatever. But just actually makes it so doing something that's excellent for XP is the best way for you to target some sort of reward. It does not power creep at all. It's just another way for you to, instead of pushing pit and get resources, you actually want more items so you can get more GAs, so you can actually masterwork those items. And at least it gives some reason to do something that's mostly XP orientated, right? Which it is right now, for better or worse.
Yeah.
I got a really good question from chat. Kind of in connection to this as well. Chillin asked, what would it take for for Blizzard to make actual challenging pinnacle bosses?
They need to not be afraid that a lot of player base will not interact.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. I feel like the current change to Lilith with these stacks is a good one, but it's still I don't want to say it's too easy because a lot of people struggle, but it is too easy to be called a pinnacle boss if we're being honest. It's just a boss.
I think they need some mechanics maybe to drop those like stacks off. So like if you stack a bunch off, you can maybe do something to drop them off so that you don't have to play perfectly every single fight. That was my biggest issue with Lilith in the earlier seasons. Is either you fully out DPS her and you don't have to deal with the mechanics, or you have to do every single thing perfectly, or you die and you start over. Like so I know one thing that Last Epoch does for their bosses. They just introduced the ward thing, which could be interesting. I mean, it's kind of like an iframe that forces you to deal with some mechanics, which some players might be hit or miss on that. If it's not a farming activity, then I think that's fine. If it is a farming activity, it's not great to put in. But on top of that, the other thing that would be cool to implement for pinnacle bosses would be I completely lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
We're on Last Epoch, what they did.
Oh, it's gone.
Alright.
Someone else can go. It'll
Yeah,
come back, I'm sure.
I'll take up the list. Like, the new. Many of you probably have seen it, and like there's like a new pinnacle boss, Aberoth, and there's like a lot of mechanics that you need to dodge, and a lot of dangerous things. And I think for something to work in like this in D4, well, fact of the matter is that people still find Lilith difficult, and no, that is just reality. Like many of the player base it's a difficult fight for them, even though we look at it and we're like, oh, well, just gonna out DPS everything or out tank everything, not a big deal. I think the difficulty that Lilith had in the, like the first season was kind of more in the right direction, but obviously one shot mechanics are just unfun. We just put it like that because it's so binary. Maybe you're like on a little bit of higher ping in 1 second. Maybe the hitbox is not as accurate, and you just walk into it and you have to redo the fight all over again. I think this is not design wise something that is good. So them going more into the direction of, hey, you made a mistake, you get 1 stack, cool. Okay, you'll take a little bit more damage next time you do it. So don't do it again. I think this promotes a lot more of the learning experience, right? You get a stack. It's not the end of the world, and you get to learn the later stages of the fight as well, because you progressively continue the fight, and you have the chance to even see further mechanics. Like, I remember season 0. Like, you went through the fight, the first wave killed you. Wow, I didn't really learn anything. I didn't really see the pattern. I didn't really get to experience more of the fight, and I'll have to do it again. And so the current system is something that I do like. What I do like them to see in terms of bosses that are like of pinnacle difficulty, I do kind of enjoy it to have mechanics that you actually need to dodge, but they do not immediately one shot you. Like, there should be a reward for dodging the mechanic, for example. Like, either maybe, okay, you dodged the mechanic successfully. Hey, here's a 10% damage buff. Like, you like some sort of thing. Or hey, yo, you dodged them successfully, you get a shield for 5 seconds, or you get a heal or something. This is a system that I have seen in other games as well, that there is a certain reward for doing mechanics. Maybe the boss gets a debuff. Maybe the boss gets stunned. Maybe like that. There's some tangible difference of why should I play this mechanic, right? Obviously, just out DPSing everything is still a choice, but I think a well-designed boss is not something that you could simply out DPS, right? Obviously, you have to be careful that it's not too
remembered.
tedious, but a good middle ground is something that.
Remembered what I was gonna say was maybe utilizing more damage over time stuff. I believe Lilith has some of that now instead of one shots. Maybe using that more because it at least gives you a chance to react. Like if you do get hit by something, maybe you activate like a barrier skill, or like if you're rogue and you're using the new shroud chest, like you activate dark shroud. Things like that. It gives you more of a chance to react instead of just outright dying.
Yeah. By the way, regarding two things Mippy was saying, one of the ways to probably improve Uber bosses is doing it somewhat what I think only Lilith is doing right now, which is having a choreographed fight. Because if you have that, you can make it so you dodge the ability, the boss accidentally keeps going, and it's a pillar that it's the boss in the head or something. It doesn't need to be silly like that, but like it, and with the interactions with the environment, because they missed the attack on you, they hit something else that got that sword stuck or something like that, right? And they are vulnerable during like the 5 seconds they're trying to pull it out or something like that. And regarding the ping, Final Fantasy XIV, you can play it like I can play from Europe on the US, and if on my screen I do not get hit by the ability, for the other players it might look like I'm shitting and completely ignoring abilities, but like if I don't get hit on my screen, I don't get hit in game. It basically functions like an FPS, right? And there's ways to implement that into games like this, because Final Fantasy XIV, when it comes to it's still a third person game as well. So there are ways to like go around the ping problem. I don't know how easy that is to implement. Not a programmer, right? But it does exist. So they could probably look at that as well. So pings are not a problem.
I think for me, the biggest frustration I had with Uber Lilith in Season 0 was the fact that on my screen, that claw was nowhere near me. Like, it wasn't even close, and it still hit you. So if there are effects that are essential one-shots that doesn't just put you behind, it could be like, oh, you do less damage for 10 seconds or something, like something that punishes you but doesn't kill you. But if the effect does one-shot you, the visual needs to match that damage. Like, you can't just be like, oh, if you stay like half a screen away from this, you still get hit. Like, that just feels bad for the player experience. And I think they've gotten better at it. I think Uber Lilith is a lot more cleaner now when it comes to when you do get hit, you should get hit. But there are so many occasions where like you as a player just get hit even though you're clearly not in it. And there are obviously many ways to solve this. You could have like a wind-up time. You could have the famous, this pizza slice is safe and the other ones aren't kind of mechanics. That happens after a certain time. There are many, many ways of designing a boss fight. But I think one of the most problematic things when it comes to Diablo 4 and pinnacle bosses is the current stagger system. You cannot make a system that includes stagger right now and have the content be challenging. There are way too many ways to abuse it. There are so many ways of getting like fourth stagger in sub 30 seconds for classes like Rogue right now. Like it's not. I don't like it. If they do keep stagger in some capacity in the future and they want to make challenging endgame bosses, they either need to have like redesign stagger overall, make it a I build up this stagger to interrupt the difficult ability, like you see in many games like Final Fantasy and whatever, or simply just reduce it somehow, make it possible to do it like maybe once or twice for damage, and that's it. Like you can't have it in this way and keep challenge in any capacity.
You actually have that in
This-
Lost Ark. There's a lot
Yeah.
of bosses that you need to use like specifically stagger abilities, and you need to actually spec into those so you can break the shell or something before he actually does timed ability. If you don't break it, you're either gonna take a lot of damage or worst case you wipe.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, like similar to interrupts in WoW, right? There's certain classes that you take in raid to actually interrupt the boss when it's about to do an ability or something, or to kick ads or something. I think this is decent, but what I would personally like to see is pinnacle bosses to just be unstaggerable. There's like no reason why they should be staggerable. Um, the problem that we as rogues have to stagger boss to deal damage is more of an issue that we have with our class design. It's not like an issue with bossing in general, right? Other classes do fine dealing damage without staggers. For rogues specifically, just through things like cold imbuement or frigid finesse, our damage relies so much on a target being crowd controlled or staggered that staggering feels so mandatory to us. I think if that was not the case design wise, having a boss being unstaggerable, pinnacle boss, like not every single boss, just those that are supposed to be very difficult, these should just not be staggerable in general.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was going to say, something related to that, but more on the side of the CC requirements sometimes for bosses. Petrify and Druid, for example, has a special line on it where if you use it on a boss, you still get the bonus, even though generally Petrify has to stun to be able to do damage. So implementing more things like that across some of the damage boosts, especially for Rogue, just so that you're still getting the boost against the boss. It could be a little bit lower, something like that, but so you can still benefit from it.
And Sork. Rogue
Sork
Sork.
is
Yeah,
Sork is
Larkin,
also.
Larkin. I'm representing Larkin. I got you,
Yeah,
bro.
we got you, dude. Don't worry about it. We're ripping the Sork a little bit here.
Yeah, and
Go on.
I was just gonna say final thing. Like the game a lot has changed. Like I would say early season 0, there's a lot more mobbing. Like sometimes you ran into a boss at the end of a nightmare dungeon, but now almost every activity has a boss at the end, or even multiple when you're looking at Inferno Horde. So something they're gonna have to address at some point.
Yeah, it is a bit of a shame that builds right now, if you can't do bosses, well, your build sucks. It's just how it goes. And I'm not sure it should be that way. Maybe, probably, there should probably be bosses in a lot of scenarios, a lot of game modes, but not in every single one. It's a limiting factor in pits and everywhere. Yeah, so not sure how I
It's
feel
al-
about that.
it also depends on like what percentage of the content is the boss. Because right now on pits, for most builds, the boss is 60 to 75% of the pit run.
Yeah,
And with fishing and stuff like that, some bosses you're just screwed. So like if it was like, I don't know, 66% you clear in the dungeon and the 33% is the boss, even builds that are not as strong on bossing, they might just be like 50% dungeon, 50% boss. And builds
yeah,
that are slower would be 2/3, 1/3. Right?
correct.
I think the biggest issue here is that bosses in Pit, for example, specifically, we have way too much HP compared to how strong elites are. I think in tier 101, it's around 25 million HP for an elite, but a boss has like 1.5 billion HP. It's like an order of magnitude of 50 times more, or is that not even 50? Is it 50? Around 50-ish times more than elite. And I think that's just way too much. Um, because as Sanctum said, if your build cannot handle bosses or does not have a way to deal with bosses in some sort of capacity, well, your build's not going to clear the pit efficiently. And I think this is a big issue because, yeah, as we mentioned, many classes depend on certain effects that do not work on bosses immediately unless they're staggered. And something where there has to be a little bit of.
We'll see what they add in the next expansion. I'm realizing that time is sort of escaping us. We have another question from chat, and then we'll start closing out the stream, I think, because we've almost gone on for 2 hours already. We had a quick question that caught my eye regarding potions, and if we would like potions to be expanded upon. Right now, it's just like a health regen, but would we like it to be sort of like D3 in any way? Do we think that could be an interesting solve for some classes or some potential issues that we have right now? That potions would be the thing that makes us do more things?
I'm not gonna lie. I personally hate potions, but I'll let someone else answer this one.
I'm at the same stage as Sanctum. I think especially the new trick attacks thing is not great for Rogue, where you get bonuses while using potions, but and someone else can take it away.
I
think-
don't
Go,
I don't
go,
like
go,
it too
go.
much either. But yeah, you can go ahead. I think you have an actual answer because I
Like,
don't think I do.
I think they need to revisit potions and what their place as in the game, because at least for barbs right now, we don't really use potions. The best use of potions we have is to keep Tyriols up. That needs us to have 100% HP. That's their use. If we need to heal up, we either have our shouts, which shield percent life, or we have that passive that as we spend the resource, we gain percent HP, or we have a skill that's better than a pot that's I'm forgetting the name. What's it called? Give me a second. Iron, whatever. We have a defensive skill that pretty much heals us to full and gives us massive shield. That we have like on 5-second cooldown, maybe lower.
Iron
Skin?
Yeah, Iron Skin. Yeah. I was missing the name. Sorry. And like like we just have no place for potion, and I don't think tying them to like damage bonus will feel good, because for rogues it feels bad. When we were using them with Temeritus, just felt kind of a cheap way to get shields, which was I don't know how I feel about that. Like, do we need them? What is their actual place? Because right now, every build just has way to generate HP, to regen HP anyway. So, you know.
And then
Yeah.
I look at the question might have been about the consumable potions as well, which I don't like those either. Like they might run out during an activity or something like that. I don't want to deal with adding them into hotkeys, even though that is a pretty good solution for them. I don't think they're interesting enough. I hope they don't get expanded on too much. I'd rather them put that power that they want to put into potions, if they're going to make more interesting ones, into something else. Maybe like they reintroduce like legendary gems or something like that, so they can make those a little bit stronger. And maybe take some of the place of that, like maybe hitting an enemy like multiple times like increases your lucky hit chance against them or something like that. Works well with high attack speed builds or something like that. Yeah, but potions, like Sanctum and Mippy said, not a huge fan of them in current state.
The sad thing is, I do think that unstable elixirs could be one of those things where it's like, well, maybe players like having, power attached to their potion, and I hope it doesn't stick if that's the case, because it does feel awful for many ways, or many reasons rather. We do have another interesting question. Unless you had something, Mippy, do you want to?
Oh, just very very shortly. I think it is interesting that they try to explore this avenue of buying power to get it from using a potion. I think design wise it's not great for many reasons that we have discussed right now, but
Yeah. So the final question that we'll bring up, actually something before we the last and final message. Oh, question. Regarding the raffle, we will essentially roll based on people that watched today. When we watched live, we're going to pick a few lucky winners, and you are then going to receive a Vessel of Hatred code. We will announce and ping the winners when we share the recording. So just stick around for that, I suppose. But it could be in a day or so. So don't just wait up all night. But we will ping everyone that is going to be winning it. Final question of the stream and the episode. Are we expecting Blizzard to take the full-on everything must be able to synergize for the Spiritborn approach to druids, with so many of the pieces not functioning together?
I hope they take some of that, because that's a big druid issue right now. Like most of your build creating for druid is how are you going to get skill tags onto your main damaging skill so that you can use more of the multipliers in the build. And it doesn't feel good to have to use some of your unique slots or aspect slots just to have to get something that Spiritborn has as baseline functionality. I hope there are some easier ways to do it. I don't think you can go all in on like you pick something and now all of your skills are like Baylor skills or things like that. I don't think it fits Druid as much. But yeah, definitely having ways to make it easier to get some of those abilities in there. Maybe I don't know how you do it. Maybe you tie it to key passive a little bit. Like if you choose the bear key passive, maybe it applies some type of bear thing to your abilities. I don't know the best way to go about it, but that's my thoughts.
I feel like there's two ways you can go about it. I feel like either you can make it more accessible, and most builds can access like different tags, and you go that way. You know, by whatever means you do that, or you can make it so alternative playstyles can get multipliers to be worth it. Like for example, pure human. Like you have a reason to play pure human. Pure bear, you have a reason to play pure bear. Pure wolf, you have a, like for example, right now, at this point, shred just sucks because let's say it can't get a storm tag, so it sucks. And it shouldn't be that way, right? You should be able to play pure wolf, pure bear, pure storm, etc. And sure, maybe some builds make sense to combine them, and it gives you special multiplier. Like it's a matter of incentives, right? They gotta balance out the opportunity cost in getting certain things. And in the game, it doesn't just go for Druid. I feel Druid just like makes this problem really apparent because they have the biggest problem with this. But all classes really have this problem. I feel where the opportunity cost to scaling stuff is not, the balance is not quite right. And it's mostly a numbers game again. Like if you give a big enough multi or defensive boost or some utility boost to, for example, human, well now it's worth it. For some build, it might be worth it. It's like it's just a numbers game. And then or you can go the full accessible route like Spiritborn where tags for everyone and you don't have any problem because all the builds have access to the same multipliers. I feel like that maybe that's more fun but less interesting. I don't know. I have to think about it, but there's two ways to go about it.
Yeah, like
I-
go.
No, I was just gonna say that if they, the problem right now is a little bit complicated than just that as well, because we have a lot of skill tags right now that are like, if they wouldn't be working as intended, would have made Druid kind of fine. So I think the first step is just fix the skill tags and make sure everything is working as you want it to, and then you go like, okay, from now, are we too weak? Do we need more synergies? Like, how do you want to approach the game from a stable, functioning product, and then see how it kind of goes? Companion, for example, on PTR had. I think it was both Nature Magic and Storm tag to the Wolf Companion when you equipped Storm's Companion. Doesn't work. It's entirely cosmetic, so it doesn't increase the damage when you equip storm damage or lightning damage or nature magic passives or anything. Like, even though the tags are there, they still doesn't work with most of the stuff. So the first step definitely would have to be to make sure that all of these issues surrounding the skill tag system is resolved, and then you can build upon some synergies after that.
And regarding this more, regarding this more like a question about like if they intend to actually take some lessons from Spiritborn and apply it to the other classes, like more a general question. Like I think there's good evidence that they'll probably do that because they started the game thinking more about D2 terms and stuff like that, and now they're more going into like a more kind of new kind of game, more tending towards D3 and maybe something more recent game-wise. So they likely are the path we see them taking on Spiritborn is something that they will likely try to eventually bring to the other classes. I don't think that's something we should pressure them too much on because I think they're already on that way. The question is, how easy is that gonna be? Like, are the maths behind everything gonna break? Like Ava was saying, they need to make sure everything is working right now before they make major changes because like a single domino piece in the wrong place could just break everything if everything is not properly coded, which is not right now. And for druids,
And I think we also enough we do see this sort of functionality in other classes already. Imbuements, for example, on Rogue is a good example of trying to have skills synergize with each other in the way that we have seen it now for the Spiritborn. I just think that imbuements is something that we could see more of in general. Not like in the sense of for Rogue, but other classes could also have the functionality of having ways to alter their skills in certain ways.
Maybe
I
that's
agree.
how they make rabies good.
Maybe.
You know, it's funny. They designed Spiritborn has a skill that's basically rabies but better. I don't know if you guys saw it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I put it that, I think. Yeah.
It also has pestilent points, but better. So they have a lot of funny mechanics. All right, guys, it is time. We have been going on for 2 hours. It's time to shut it down for tonight. I want to thank everyone that joined. It was a very pleasurable experience having you guys here. Both the viewers, but also the beautiful minds of these co-hosts. From now on, we're going to be doing these about once a week. Maybe we might deviate sometimes depending on news and stuff, but thank you all for joining. The winners of the Vessel of Hatred codes will be announced in the news channel, I think, by someone that is not the color purple, probably color red.
Yes,
But yeah,
yes.
yeah, Reese is chilling here. Thank you all for joining. I'll hopefully see you all next time. Bye bye.
I
All
guess.
right,
Like
thank you.
Take
See you
care, everyone.
guys. All right. All right, guys. Yeah, this has been the podcast. We pretty fun to all of them. Someone said my mic was a little bit low. That's probably because I was not as close to the mic as I'm usually am, because I was like leaning back a little bit during the podcast. It should be fine now. If it is fine, then please give me a little bit of feedback about this. Actually, a bit of surprise that it is supposed to be. I'm seeing it. My monitoring says it's an yellow, so it should be fine. Maybe it's because I pushed against the mic for like a few times. Yeah, we had a little bit of a like I wanted to use an overlay for the Diablo Insight episode, but it was not done by the time that we started, so I had to wing it a little bit. Should be a little bit better for the next time, but yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I certainly had a lot of fun. I will actually be back tomorrow with a stream for pit pushing. Yeah, well, Pit Leader Part 2 is live now. You can check out the events page on maxroll to see the current standings, and yeah, I'll start doing a little bit of pan shot pushing tomorrow. We do have a little bit of a changed schedule. I posted it on my Discord already and my Sanctuary forum post. We're gonna start at 4 p.m. GMT +2. That is in around 17 hours from now, and we're gonna go until like 8 p.m. Usual 4-hour stream that we're gonna have, and I hope to see you guys there. We're gonna temper our amulet that we the 2 Great Havocs amulet with Exploit and Fringe Finesse is going to be tempered on that stream. So if you want to see how that goes, then make sure to tune in. Hopefully we're gonna get the temper right, so we can actually use it in the penshot build. And yeah, that's what's going to happen tomorrow. And I'm excited for it. Hope you guys are too. And thank you guys for watching today. And I hope you have a wonderful remainder of the evening. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.